Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we hope you're enjoying your Thanksgiving weekend, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. Kentucky's getting back into the private prison business just years after a series of high-profile problems led the state to back out of having companies run the lockups. This year, Kentucky has hit a record-high prison population of close to 25,000, even after legislation that diverts a lot of nonviolent sentences. The drug problem in the Commonwealth is so severe and the jails and prisons so crowded that the Justice and Public Safety Cabinet has determined it's about the only option it has. The wave of opioid abuse continues to grip the Commonwealth. Nearly 5 Kentuckians a day die of overdoses. The web of criminal activity that props up the drug trade and those trying to get their hands on pills keeps the justice system clogged up. And in many cases, Kentuckians are locked up with little or no treatment because there are few options available. John Tilley was a lawmaker before he was appointed by Governor Matt Bevin to lead the Justice Cabinet. He's traveled the country and internationally to talk about criminal justice reform and drug control policy. And in many years before that, he was an intern here at WKYT back in the early 1990s. So it's always like a welcome home. Secretary, thanks for coming.
No, thank you for having me.
Appreciate
Truly
it.
the good old days.
Right, those were the days.
Especially in light of some of the challenges we have today.
Well, the challenges are many, and Mr. Secretary, you have acknowledged the problems that led to the former administration deciding to get out of having private companies run prisons, including allegations of sexual assault. There was a prison riot. What led you and convinced you that this was a sound decision?
I was one of the loudest and most vocal supporters of that decision to back away, and because of the legislation that I sponsored and the legislature supported, we were able to close those 3 private prison facilities with a decrease in population. We were able to close another state prison, and now we find ourselves, after some of those years of decreases in population, dealing with an incredible opioid, what is now a pandemic. I think it's gone far beyond what is an epidemic. You mentioned the overdose deaths. 60,000 Americans died last year from it. We had 13,000 Kentuckians visit ERs. So now we see a prison population where our possessory crimes, really denoting people who are addicted, not traffickers, not those committing other violent crimes, but largely low-level, nonviolent possessory drug offenses are who we are finding behind our walls now. And these increases have caused us to have to open one of these facilities. It's a decision that we didn't, again, want to have to make. It's the only one we have. That and the fact that we have some aging infrastructure, inefficient structures. This is the only decision we could make. And we're going to, again, hope this is a short-term fix. But without reforms, Bill, we're going to be back here next year talking about another 2 facilities at great cost to the taxpayer, and that's not a decision we want to have to make.
In 2004, 2 buildings were set on fire at the Lee Adjustment Center. In 2012, the state was forced to transfer female prisoners out of the Otter Creek Correctional Complex. This was over sexual abuse. Are you convinced that you have safeguards in place that will protect the inmates and protect the Commonwealth?
We had a team that spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours over a year researching and reviewing all the places, all the contracts that exist all over the country for these private prisons. We think we have the tightest contract in the country. We don't think it's close. They agreed to every demand we placed on them. That is CoreCivic, this private prison company. We essentially will run these prisons almost in effect. We have total access. The state police has total access. We maintain 24/7 video feed. We have boots on the ground as well. They have to, we hire and fire their employees. I mean, it's almost as if we are running this prison the way we'd run one of our state facilities. They just happen to own these 3 facilities. We couldn't build one quick enough to really house the 800 or so we have to move.
This is a almost $17 million a year contract to operate the Lee Adjustment Center. Do you think that will be fully offset by closing down the Kentucky State Reformatory?
We do. It won't be fully offset until, because we've already spent the money in this fiscal year, but for the next full fiscal year it will be fully offset. The next 2 will not. That will be new expense, great expense to the taxpayer.
Is it a disappointment to you that after working so hard as you did as the the chairman of the Judicial Committee in the House, and then working so hard on in your present position and taking the political heat for lowering the number of Kentuckians who are held in custody, that we've now gone the other way and that the numbers are up?
You know, it is. There's 2 ways to look at this. One would be that we did see the decreases initially Most had us well over 30,000 today. We're at 24,000. So we are, again, there are some cost of avoidance gains there. However, we should be certainly below this. We are a top 5 state, Bill, when it comes to per capita incarceration. We have more children with an incarcerated parent in this state than anywhere in the country. We have one of the highest rates of female incarceration. It's now well above the national average. We only trail Oklahoma now in terms of how many women we lock up for drug offenses, low-level, nonviolent drug offenses for which these women could be treated outside the prison walls. It's so bad, Bill. Think about this. As a country, we incarcerate 1 out of every 3 women worldwide. In other words, this country incarcerates far more women than any place else in the world, and Kentucky leads the way inside the United States of America. And that's just unacceptable. The effect on families and children, and just, again, low-level drug offenders are leading the way, and we can do better. And that's what's the most disappointing part. The legislature's rolled back some of those reforms. That's another reason we find ourselves here. And I think generally just the opioid pandemic is worse than anyone could have envisioned when we embarked on these reforms in 2010 and 11.
Mr. Secretary, obviously many people are locked up when what they need is long-term treatment.
Absolutely.
Of some kind, addiction treatment, and then the tools to get back
right.
into society. How can we deal with this?
We work on it every day, Bill. We've increased treatment over 1,000% in our facilities. We now have 6,000 treatment slots in prison. We are seeing new treatment providers come into this state every day. The governor and I just announced with our Drug Control Policy Division and CHFS a hotline, an on-demand treatment hotline. We're doing something each and every day. We're working with hospitals to use, again, strategies like peer coaches and bridge clinics. At U of L, the first 5 people to come in who were connected to a peer coach got treatment immediately. And that wasn't happening prior to that effort. So those kinds of things are happening in mass. We think that'll turn. We're limiting the number of prescription pills you can get when you go in for acute pain. Now, there are exceptions for chronic pain, for cancer, for end of life. But we again, still prescribe far too many opioids in this country. We still consume nearly 90% of the world's opioids in this country, and Kentucky leads the way. We've got to change that dynamic first.
Is there an intervention opportunity that we're missing somehow?
Absolutely. Again, shrinking the top of that funnel. We've got to, because 80% of those, well over 80% of those who are now addicted to opioids, whether it be heroin or fentanyl or carfentanil, some analog of those, started with a legal prescription pill. Think about that for a minute. This is different than any other drug epidemic we've ever experienced. Different than crack cocaine, different than meth, different than any other.
The local governments in many cases say they need help in trying to build. In some cases they want to construct facilities. They're sort of hybrids with treatment and incarceration. The price tags for new jails are enormous. Are the localities going to have to make that decision between parks and whether or not their roads are paved and that kind of thing, and having these treatment facilities? We
work very closely with county officials in Kentucky, like no other state except Louisiana. We house half of our state inmate population in our 70-plus full-service county jails, and that's a tough proposition. Now, it allows counties to pay for their jails because of the per diem oftentimes, but it also has caused these jails to be overcrowded like they've never been before. And I think they are going to have to make some tough decisions. I mean, what's going on in Madison County, I think, is the right decision to make. I think that's innovative. I've worked with them. We've talked to them. I applaud that kind of decision. Not every county is going to have that kind of those kinds of resources available to them, but we've got to help. We've got to incentivize that kind of innovation. I mean, Kentucky has received national acclaim for our drug treatment in our jails. So it is happening.
Just describe, as you understand it, what they're doing in Madison County, sort of a hybrid approach.
Absolutely. Just build, I mean, treatment over incarceration. Right now, county jails, because of their physical plant, they were never designed for programming or treatment. They were designed for short-term housing. And that's why you see them triple and quadruple bunked in some cases and sleeping on floors. That's not, again, and when you're housing an inmate who needs some correction, who needs rehabilitation, whether it be drug treatment or again, some kind of cognitive behavioral therapy, which again sounds warm and fuzzy, but this stuff actually works. And we see those numbers in our recidivism rates. We can drive that down. If you lower recidivism, Bill, that's the essence of public safety. That's fewer victims, that's less crime, less strain on the community. And if we don't rehabilitate offenders while they're behind the wall, then we lose there all the way around. And so It's not that we are trying to make things any easier on an offender who deserves some time behind the wall, but we need to distinguish who we're mad at and who we're afraid of. Those who we're afraid of need to spend significant time. Those we're mad at need the kind of treatment they'll get in Madison County with that new hybrid facility.
We're with Kentucky's Justice and Safety Secretary, John Tilley, on Kentucky Newsmakers, and we're coming back some more questions for him, including what he might propose for the legislature coming up. Welcome back, and it's great to have you here on WKYT for Kentucky Newsmakers. We're visiting with the State Safety Secretary, Justice and Safety Secretary John Tilley, and continuing our discussion. WKYT recently detailed shortages in personnel to oversee offenders who are on probation or parole as well. We had a case where one officer was to supervise 70 people at a time.
Right.
There's a high burnout rate. Many of them are leaving. How is that being addressed, or can it be?
That was a problem that I spoke at length about as a legislator, that we're overworking and underpaying these officers who deal with society's worst problems. And we're making certain they have caseloads that are above the national average as well. The governor and I, we sat down last year's budget that we're in now, last budget session, and determined that we needed to ease those caseloads. And listen, the legislature had to make some very tough decisions, but that extra money did not make it in. What we see, though, without that investment is we see an incredibly high revocation rate because of that burnout, because of the inability to put officers out there on the street. So we had 6,000 people return to prison last year rather than maybe get the help they needed through treatment or some kind of immediate, swift and certain intervention in their life. Maybe it's get them back into treatment. You know, again, maybe just what they call a quick dip. Rather than a year or two extra in prison, you just maybe a weekend or a week, and that's actually where the data shows us we make the most strides with that immediate sanction, and we're not being able to do that. And Bill, let me tell you, these 6,000 revocations where people return to prison, only 4% were for new crime. The rest were what we call a technical violation, missing a meeting, failing a drug test, maybe absconding, but that's not really running from the law. That just means they failed to report. And so we've got to rethink all of that, and we're doing that right now.
You oversee the Kentucky State Police as well in your cabinet, and we have heard from even some state police commanders who say that at their post they have equipment shortages, they're worried about their cruisers being worn out, they're having difficulty in recruiting new troopers. You're aware of those issues?
Absolutely. We walked into that with eyes open. It's difficult to even put a number because we could use 500 new cruisers today. Let me give you a really shocking number though. Our new cadets, we graduated 41 new cadets, and the newest car for that new cadet had 140,000 miles on it. The newest car we could give a cadet. And so that's
and then we're
sending
them up some hollow to deal with some matter by themselves.
Yeah, these troopers are not. They are out in this largely rural state by themselves oftentimes, and and again, the legislature understands this. I think we're going to get the funding we need. But if we just return to funding levels, Bill, of 2010 in corrections, I could write a $160 million check to the state police. That's how much more we're spending in corrections. And there doesn't look to be an end in sight without the proper reforms in our system, which other states have done. These are states like Texas, Georgia, South Carolina, again, Utah. I mean, these are states which we followed. This is round two for us, and most of these states are in round two as well. And so we could see those drops if we can get the right reforms this session.
You came up with a number, $160 million, and I think that's exactly what the Council on Post-Secondary Education says that they are requesting as an increase to return to the previous levels in higher education as well. There are a lot of people heading toward this legislature right now saying more money needs to be spent in this Commonwealth, and it is not coming in.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, in state government, for every 2 people we incarcerate, we take a teacher out of the classroom. That's a dollar-for-dollar exchange. And we don't print money. The state has to balance its budget. Now, is it structurally balanced all the time? No, there's one-time money spent for ongoing expenses, but you do what you have to get by at times. And we're in one of the toughest spots we've been in since I've been in state government. And we're going to have to make some very difficult choices. So when we can enhance public safety, control corrections costs, again, with the crime rate remaining low or going down, then that is a public policy win, and we can return, I'd say, $150 to $200 million to the general fund every year. If we were just to drop them down to a reasonable number, that is our prison population.
Do you have priorities then for the 2018 General Assembly?
We are working every day. We have 8 to 10 consultants working with us right now to make recommendations, and a team of people, the governor and I have put together experts from every potential field, every stakeholder in the system. They're working right now, today as we speak, on these matters, and we'll have a report to make to the legislature. And obviously there are legislators on this panel as well. If they'll adopt these reforms, I think we'll see some tremendous gains in this area, and hopefully not be talking about opening private prison 2 and 3 next year.
In the wake of the sexual harassment scandal that has gripped House leadership and of course is a huge topic in society at large right now, what kind of reminder is that to state employees and supervisors at every level?
Well, I think it's, first of all, listen, pay attention during those trainings. You know, human resources and those experts do a great job at identifying ways to avoid those situations and to make certain the workplace is free of that kind of thing. And I think you know, that's the most, again, the simplest way to view it is to pay attention to those who know how to structure that workplace free of that kind of environment.
Justice Secretary John Tilley, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
And always enjoy it.
Thank you. And we hope you'll keep it here on WKYT. More Kentucky Newsmakers in a moment. And welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. Kentucky Secretary of State Allison Lundergan Grimes' office is keeping busy with the filings right now for public office on what will end up being a long 2018 ballot. She's also making a push for the state legislature to pass medical marijuana. Grimes says she's heard from groups, including veterans, who favor it. This week, she convened a task force to help push a bill. But Grimes is a Democrat, and both chambers of the legislature are solidly Republican. So how far will that push go? Secretary Grimes now serving her second term as the state's chief elections officer, with us for Kentucky Newsmakers. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.
Why did you decide to take up the issue of medical marijuana, which Republicans quickly said was, you know, outside your scope of duties in your office?
Well, I think as a statewide officer, the obligation of every elected official is to listen to their constituents, and most importantly, when they ask for help, to try to deliver it. This is an issue that I have been focused on since 2014. We're now in 2017, on our way to 2018, and the issue still hasn't seen reality here in Kentucky. We have 29 states in the District of Columbia that have already passed legislation to help folks who are wanting to ease off of opioids and prescription medicines by using medical marijuana. And the evidence and the studies are there that it can lessen side effects. It can help folks that are in severe physical and mental debilitating conditions. And we have hundreds of thousands of Kentuckians that are demanding it. So you better bet when I interact with veterans, as I do as Kentucky's chief election official on a regular basis, and I hear story after story of veterans who have been in Iraq and Afghanistan, one veteran serving 3 tours, coming home, having severe PTSD, trouble interacting with his family, his children, because of the severe anxiety, wanting to have access to this medication that folks that he served in the military with do all across this nation. I'm not going to turn away from that. I'm going to say, let me help, and that's what this is all about.
Do you see medical marijuana as a gateway to a further expansion of marijuana to recreational marijuana in the state?
I don't. Right now, our focus is specifically and solely on medical marijuana, something that 29 other states in this country have already legalized. There is a pathway forward. There is policy that has already been put into action, and importantly, there are already jobs occurring across the nation, and it's time for Kentucky to catch up. Our task force yesterday heard from some amazing patients and advocates, especially veterans, and the hope is that the policy that will come forward in 2018, not only will it be bipartisan in support, which I do believe that is possible and hopefully will be the case, but that it will be patient and veteran centered.
Do you have an idea who might carry a bill for you in the legislature?
Well, my hope is that folks realize I'm not the first voice to bring this to light. I'm proud to lend my voice to a choir of folks that are out there recognizing this is something that can have a positive impact, not only for hundreds of thousands of Kentuckians, but especially for our economy. Folks like Representative Jeff Greer, Representative John Sims, Senator Higdon, Senator Clark, Senator McGarvey. These are all folks, Senator Dan Syme, that have worked on this issue before, and I do think you'll see both in the House and the Senate chambers policy legislation specifically focused on medical marijuana the help that it can give so many that are suffering, whether from cancer, fibromyalgia, Crohn's disease, PTSD, the list goes on and on.
So you believe there can be a bipartisan bill?
I do.
This is a heavily Republican-controlled legislature, as you know, and you're a prominent Democrat. They won't be looking to do you favors by passing a bill, right?
Well, I think that folks have to realize the reason government was formed, it was from the consent of the governed. Power is derived from the people here in this state, and if there's anything we have seen since the last elections in 2016 is that folks are not shy about coming out, getting up, getting out, and getting loud and getting engaged. And on this issue, they are as engaged as ever.
Filing deadline is late January. We can see this year's going to be interesting. We know next year's is a long ballot. This may be the longest ballot, right, where you have legislative seats and local elections?
2018 is a big election year. It's our county election year. That's the reason we reference all of our county elections. We also have all of our judicial races that are on the ballot. And importantly, you're going to see our even-numbered state Senate districts, all of our state House, congressional districts that are on the ballot. So it is a huge ballot already. The filing deadline opened at the beginning of November. We have 160 folks that have already filed. We're anticipating that list continuing to grow. The deadline coming up January 30th.
And some offices file locally and some have to come to your office and file, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
If an office involves more than one county or a statewide effort or judicial races, they're in the Secretary of State's office for filings. Otherwise, you're looking at your county clerk's office for all the local filings.
For those who are out there considering maybe running for local office or for an office and have not done that before, you know, with all the tough talk in politics and the scrutiny of public officials these days, do you encourage people to enter that arena?
I sure do. We need folks now more than ever to get up and get out and get loud and be a part of this process. If you are out there and you're passionate about an issue, you want to see something done about it, quit just sitting on the sidelines. Jump into this arena. Importantly, put your name on the ballot. It is one of the most courageous things I think folks can do to offer themselves up for public service. And importantly, we need folks at the local, the state, and the federal level to be engaged, especially fresh voices, I think is a very good thing. Encourage folks to go to our website, sos.ky.gov. If they're interested, you can download your paperwork there. It'll actually help you fill it in and auto-populate it where you can bring it in. And I'll look forward to seeing folks in Frankfort before January 30th.
Some new people are in charge of the State Board of Elections. There were some personnel changes made this week. Was that necessitated by problems or why?
It was a leadership change, Bill, that was necessary for the protection of our employees. And importantly, we're excited about the new folks that are going to be taking helm. We made extensions of employment offers, and my hope is we'll see those offers accepted to individuals with amazing caliber in terms of election law, engagement, community service, public policy, and importantly, legal expertise. So those folks we're hoping will be with us at the State Board of Elections come the beginning of December.
The sexual harassment landscape around the country has touched off a lot of conversations. It has also touched our state capitol. We asked Secretary Tilley about this early in the program. What reminder do you have for state workers and supervisors?
If you see something, say something. In the Office of Secretary of State and the State Board of Elections, zero tolerance for harassment of any kind. Importantly, making sure that you have a safe and healthy workplace to go to. It's what's of utmost importance, regardless of whether you're in private or public office. And my hope is that folks realize if they're seeing something that they have concerns about, they can always come to the Office of Secretary of State, but that they'll speak up and say something about it. And I think a lot of credit is due to the courageous folks that are coming forward now. And my hope is that we will give them the credibility and the respect that they're due and deserve.
The budget scenario looks very tough going into to the next cycle. We have been cutting spending for many years. The opioid crisis and other challenges are going to be costly if they're going to be addressed. I guess I'm asking you to step outside your constitutional duties again on this. And what is your feeling about what should be done coming up in the legislative session to deal with that budget, to try to deal with this pension crisis as well?
Well, obviously the pension is an issue that didn't just start with this governor. It started several generations ago, but it has to be addressed. but it has to be addressed in the right way. My hope is that this is not a knee-jerk reaction. It is something that is well thought out with input from all stakeholders, and importantly that we continue to keep the promises that we made folks who got in state government many generations ago that either are preparing for a retirement or already are retired, especially our teachers across Kentucky. I've been a very vocal advocate and support of making sure we keep the promises to all of our state employees across the Commonwealth. They do so much for us, and we have to hold up our end of what we asked them to do and what we promised them when they got in state government. But I think we have to look for additional revenues. Medical marijuana is one of them. It's an economy where we're already seeing across the nation over 150,000 folks are currently employed because of either cultivating, producing, or dispensing medical marijuana. It's going to be doubled by 2020 when we're looking at what the actual impact is going to be across the nation. We could catch up. We can help create jobs right here in the state while helping people across the Commonwealth who are in severe physical and debilitating conditions.
You are term limited in your office. What does the future hold for Allison Lundergan Grimes?
You know, I haven't really thought much past trying to get over my turkey coma from this holiday season, but we're doing a lot of things in the Office of Secretary of State. I'm so blessed to have been able to serve now, as you mentioned, 2 terms in the office. We have expanded our business division, importantly all of our filings online.
You know, some things get mentioned out there. Lexington mayor has been mentioned, of course the coming governor's race and other statewide offices.
If I paid attention to the rumor mill, Bill, I would never get anything done. My focus has been on our work, and I appreciate very much the respect and encouragement that folks are offering out there. But right now, I'm encouraging people to get on the ballot for 2018.
Secretary Grimes, thanks for coming.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for joining us for this edition of Kentucky Newsmakers. We certainly hope you make it a good week ahead.